want to talk to you today a little bit about ADHD and something called object permanence. Let's start with object permanence. Object permanence happens developmentally in your toddler years. Before a toddler gets object permanence, if I step behind a door, they are not going to come look for me. You're gone. You're just not there anymore. Object permanence is when I step behind that door and the toddler comes and looks behind the door and tries to find me because they know that just because I'm not within their eyesight doesn't mean I've disappeared. People with ADHD tend to struggle with object permanence in a way. They know that things are still there, but for the most part, if they're not in front of them and they're the least bit distracted or there's time and space between those things, then they struggle to remember. I have a daughter who has ADHD, and she's actually the one that taught me about this. She would struggle with her clothes, for example. I would go in her room after noticing that she was only wearing 3 or 4 or 5 outfits or items of clothing, knowing that she has more, over and over and over again. And I would go in her room and be like, "How can I help you? This is a mess." But the only things that she were wearing were the things that were out that she could see. So I'd offer to help her reset her room, which caused her a lot of anxiety because once I did that, she felt that she didn't know where anything was. You might have somebody like that in your life if you try to help them by organizing their desk or cleaning up their room or moving their phone or their keys, then they're going to feel like they don't know where stuff is. That's part of ADHD is they frequently lose things. So after some research, we kind of came across this idea that people with ADHD kind of struggle with this idea of object permanence. The other thing was when I would open up drawers and there would be clothes in there, she would say, "Oh my goodness, I forgot I had that. I love it." So it's not that it was not preferred clothing, it was just out of sight, out of mind. That can be difficult in when you're talking about mess, but it also could be difficult when you're talking about relationships because people with ADHD also tend to struggle maintaining an emotional bond with people who are out of sight, out of mind. So this is your friend who you will text and or call, and 10 days later they respond. They probably read and your text, heard a message, maybe even believed that they responded, but got distracted. And 10 days later, they're like, "Oh my gosh, yes, I totally want to come tomorrow night." I hear couples sometimes complain, "Well, if I were more important, then they would answer my phone call at work or stop playing video games and talk to me." And I think some of that has to do with hyper focus, and some of that has to do with not my face right now. And so it's hard for me to remember that we have this emotional bond and I need to tend to it. So that's what it looks like in individuals and relationships. It's just how their brain is wired. It's important to know that this is not personal. It's just how their brain is wired.